Hey, I'm Olivia, and you're listening to Soarin Around WDW. Hi, listeners, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Soarin Around WDW. We have some exciting news this week. Drum roll, please. We are now on Apple Podcasts. Don't ask me what took me so long to get on Apple, but let's just say I did not fully understand the RSS lingo and had been putting it off for quite a while. So don't worry, we are still on Spotify and YouTube as well. For those of you who are new listeners, let me reintroduce this little slice of happiness we put into a podcast. We are a Disney Parks inspired podcast where we talk about everything from trip recaps to our nostalgic memories growing up in Walt Disney World, Disney history, and every ride challenges. I'm your host, Olivia, and I'm usually joined by co-hosts like my dad or my brother, Regan. But also, we have some fun special guests from time to time as well. Which brings me to the next item of business. What should you all be called as fans of this podcast? The best thing I could come up with were little aviators or flight crew, but send me your favorites or vote in the poll on our Instagram at Soarin Around WDW Pod for your top pick. I'd love to hear what y'all come up with as well. So today our episode is going to be full of fun. We are starting with our very recent trip recap. At the time of recording this, we returned from our trip just a few hours ago, and I am exhausted, but it was such an amazing time, and I can't wait to share everything with y'all about the trip. Later on, Dad and I are also going to be talking about our 2025 Attraction Showdown March Madness bracket and choosing our bottom 4 attractions to be eliminated from a list of 68 rides to give us 64 total rides to start our bracket. We will be posting this bracket on our Instagram as well so that all of you at home can play along and pick who you think will be the ultimate winner. As it goes with the basketball version of this bracket challenge, you might be surprised by who takes home the championship trophy. Be on the lookout for all of that on our Instagram. Then buckle up. It's going to be a great time for soaring around the world, the Walt Disney World that is, with us today. So jumping right into our trip recap, I wanted to first start off with our day 1 travel day, which was Thursday, March 6th. We got up at the crack of dawn, actually before the crack of dawn, at 3:30 in the morning and hopped into the car. About halfway into our car ride over to RDU, I realized that I forgot the stroller in our garage, which was a major problem. We didn't have time to turn back around and still make it without me having to be super stressed solo with Aili. So as soon as we parked at the airport, I went onto Kingdom Strollers and saw that you can reserve the next day. I had been hoping to have our stroller for the airport and exploring the hotel as well as Disney Springs that night, but luckily Aili just really mustered up her excitement and did great with walking that day. So we got on our flight. That was the first leg of our trip to Boston, because remember last week when I told you we were using points? Yes. This meant flying the opposite direction of Orlando because we're calling from Raleigh-Durham. So when we go to Orlando, typically we fly direct, but because I was using points, the way that JetBlue works now without having a direct flight is we have to fly north to go south, which is crazy. So off to Boston we went early in the morning. Our flight to Boston was not entirely full, which didn't shock me since it was a 6 a.m. flight, but it went smooth with no complications, and I actually was thankful that I didn't have to break down the stroller solo and drag it down the jet bridge. I have been there before with both kids solo, and that was rough. Of course, Aili did not sleep at all on this first flight or the car ride over to the airport, but I did sleep for maybe half of it. Then I realized what else I forgot. Her headphones. I had mine that worked in her iPad, but they're in-ear, and I feel like the traditional Apple headphones never really work for kids' ears. She used them, but they kept falling out or hurting her ears, so I decided, okay, we need to get her some different headphones. So when we landed in Boston, we sped over to our gate, which luckily was in this same concourse, and we found a Dunkin' Donuts to grab something to eat, as well as some over-the-ear headphones for Aili, which cost me an arm and a leg, but honestly, it was worth it to just have her be comfortable for the super long flight. I did call Kingdom Strollers at that time and asked if they could do a same-day drop-off, and they said no, but they could get us our stroller at 6:30 a.m. on Friday morning before we headed to the Skyliner. So after I compared pricing between a couple of different places like Baby Quip, and a few other local stroller places to Orlando. I went ahead and reserved online for the Kingdom stroller 6:30 a.m. drop-off at the hotel, and then I had to do the airport drop-off for our return flight because we wouldn't have been able to get it back to them at 6:30 a.m. on Sunday because our flight was at 6 a.m. So that wouldn't work. So they do have a drop-off and pickup option in Terminal A in Orlando, which is not where we are flying out of. We are flying out of Terminal C, but that was, a whole other part of the story that I will get to. I decided to do the pop pickup, or where they drop it off to me at 6:30 a.m. and then go ahead and drop it back off to them in Orlando at the airport because I saw no other way to do it, because the latest pickup that they had for pop the night after we were done at the parks was like 5 p.m. or something, which obviously wouldn't have worked because that was in the middle of our park day. And the good news is it honestly wasn't as expensive as I thought it would be. I think I paid $80 total with tax for the Friday, Saturday, and then Sunday drop off. And that really is not bad. When I was looking on Baby Quip, the prices were about $120 for that time frame. And so I was happy with the $80, honestly, especially since this was a last minute thing and it was totally my bad for forgetting ours in the garage. We did end up going with the single Bob stroller because Aili is getting bigger and she wouldn't have been able to fit as well in the other stroller options. She is about 45 inches tall, so some of the strollers go up to 48 inches. She is tiny. She's not even 40 pounds yet. She's right at 40 pounds. So that made a difference in my decision making as well. Obviously, if she was a larger child or a taller child, the stroller might not have worked out as well. Or if she was smaller, like our youngest, a smaller, less expensive stroller would have worked, but it really wasn't that much more for the Bob. I think it was $10 more total. So it was worth it to me. Our flight from Boston to Raleigh was uneventful, except when we landed, there was a guy who was either drunk or had some kind of issue because he was about 4 rows behind us and there were 2 girls talking when we were waiting to get off the plane. Everyone else ahead of us was getting their bags and was in front of them. And he just totally lost his mind, saying that they needed to shut up and get their bags and hurry up. And then it was Aili and I's turn to get off the plane, which we were in front of these girls, and he kept yelling at us to go faster, and it stressed me out. And I don't do well in situations like that. I don't like feeling the pressure, especially with Aili with me. I think if Aili wasn't with me, I would have snapped back at that guy so fast, but she was with me. I was trying to set a good example and be patient. And I don't know what was wrong with him. Maybe he was going to poop his pants or something. I have no idea. But the girls kindly snapped back at him for me, saying, hey, she has a kid and she's trying to get off. She's trying to get her own bags down, which literally took me all of 30 seconds. It's not like I was the sloth in Zootopia taking my sweet time or anything. I don't know why he was so stressed out. But poor Aili was like, why is that guy so mad when we're at Disney World? And I just gently reminded her that Orlando is not Disney World and there are crazy people. He clearly was not going to Disney, and if he was not going to have a magical time. I felt bad for anyone who was with this guy. Hopefully he was fine and everything worked out, but it was a little bit stressful for me. I don't like being put in those kind of situations. Once we got to the arrival area in Orlando, I put in our Uber information and they came within 5 minutes. It was very quick. It was $56 for the Uber, which was about $20 higher than I remember it being when I had been looking the days prior, even at the same time of day, specifically to pop from MCO. But oh well, it just was what it was. I wasn't going to sit there and wait for the prices to go down, so I went ahead and just paid the $56. Aili's seatbelt safety first device worked really well again, and she was pretty sleepy at this point, but she was a little nervous with our driver. I think she just hasn't really been in very many taxi or Uber situations in her life, so she didn't fall asleep. She was fighting it pretty hard. And of course, the driver was very nice, but immediately asked if he could vape while he drove us. And I was like, no. So there's a kid in the car, but thanks for asking. And he laughed and was like, no problem. But if she was not in the car with you, I would not have asked. And I was like, okay, how did this guy get 4.5 stars or higher? I think he was 4.8 on Uber, but otherwise he was very nice and very talkative and asked us about our trip. And, we talked about where he was from, where we were from, blah, blah, blah. And on the drive, I noticed our hotel room was ready and I had done the mobile check-in. So my Magic Band was already hooked up in the app from, previous trips. I've been using this Magic Band for a couple years now. And that just made it super easy. So I forget if I said this last week, but we were just in a standard, not preferred room at Pop. I really didn't feel the need to be close to the big pool. It's often more noisy from my experience at past Disney resorts the closer you are to the pool. And I know it's closer to the Skyliner and the food, but I don't mind walking. So a smidge farther to the food court and the Skyliner was not a big deal to me. I know people are like, well, it's another quarter of a mile or whatever. I don't know. It really took like 5 minutes to walk to and from our room to the Skyliner and to the food court and the main pool and everything. So I thought it was totally worth it. We ended up being put in the 80s 90s section, which I actually thought was super fun theming as an early 90s baby, and I enjoyed being over there. So I didn't think that was a problem at all, and I would definitely do that again. It wasn't significantly more expensive, which I'll get into the differences here in a little bit, but I thought that it was totally fine to just be in a standard room. And we got put kind of on the end. We weren't on the pool side of our room either, which again was fine because I don't want the noise of the pool. So it was perfect. I really liked our room. We were on the very end of the row as well, which was great. We got to Pop Century, and I did want to run into the hotel and talk to the desk because we had a slight hiccup with our plans. And this is something I don't think I talked about last week because I wasn't sure what the outcome was going to be, and I didn't want to put like bad juju out there. But my mom had decided she wanted to come with us and stay the night on Friday so that we could all get to rope drop early. But she already had her ticket. She lives in Florida, so she had a ticket. And I had called Disney the week before when we made this plan about her staying and asked if they could add her to the hotel. And first they said, because we booked through a travel agent, Katie Smith, who is awesome, 2+3 travelers. If you didn't hear me last week, she's fantastic. And they said that she would have to call. And I didn't want to make Katie call about this. This is not anything that was that big of a deal to me. And so they also said because we were a ticket package with hotel and park tickets together, my mom would have to purchase the same package, even though she already had a park ticket. And so in order to add her, it would have cost this crazy amount of money. So I didn't add her. I had planned to just give her my app to log in to get into our room. But my mom brought up a good point that Disney has gates and they ask for your ID for whoever's on the reservation. So she couldn't do that. So don't ask me how this works for people who do, like, I know people go and decorate people's hotel rooms before they arrive. Like, I don't understand how any of this works if they're so strict with who is getting in your room. But anyway, when we got there, the Uber pulled up and I even had to show my ID, give my name and everything for the reservation. They also had a sign up when you pulled up to the hotel saying only for reserved guests. So my guess is this is so people don't resort hop there. I know people do that though to like check out hotels. So I don't know if they do that like from Disney Springs on a bus or the Skyliner or how people are hopping all the time. I guess Skyliner makes sense, but I wasn't sure how other people like check out the resort. I know other people have done this for Art of Animation and different things too. So not sure what your secrets are, but I'm just curious. Maybe Disney Springs is the answer. That just seems like so out of the way. But our backup plan was for my mom to meet us at the hotel after Fantasmic so I could get her in. But I decided to stop at the desk and just see, could I add her as being able to come in and, be in the room that night. And said, it was my daughter's birthday. My mom lives here and we tried to call and they weren't super helpful. And she was so nice. And she was like, no problem. She added her in a note, said, it's grandma coming to quote unquote visit us. And they don't charge for parking at Pop. So that was a non-issue already. And so that worked out great. It ended up being no problem. And I had given her my app to log into the room, which I don't know if that's a Disney no-no and I shouldn't be sharing that. I'm not sure, but that's what happened. So we got over to our room, which of course had the Murphy bed and then a queen bed. And the decor was cute. It was small though. It has been a minute since I've stayed in an actual Disney hotel. The last resort on property that I've stayed in was Swan and Dolphin. And I definitely think those rooms are a good bit bigger than Pop. So since it was just the two of us, just Aili and I, it worked out fine. But I know if Maddie and Blake were with us, they wouldn't have really loved this space. It would have been kind of small, especially with a stroller in the room. And we are also usually spoiled either staying with family at Regan's house when they lived in Orlando or with my mom at her Hilton Vacation Club, which just has a lot more space. I do also wish that these rooms had a true mini fridge in the room and not just the beverage cooler. But otherwise, the room was clean and comfortable. The beds were comfortable. I ended up sleeping on the Murphy bed. Aili slept on the other queen bed. And it definitely felt like we were just in the Disney bubble, which is half the fun of staying at a Disney resort. After we went to our room and got situated, we got changed, and Aili decided she wanted to swim after we ate our late lunch. So I had her put her suit on underneath her clothes, and we headed over to Everything Pop to get some food. I was actually very happy that they had more than just chicken and burgers, like chicken strips and burgers, since I knew we'd be eating that at the park over the next few days. I had the roasted mojo chicken with mashed potatoes and garlic green beans, and the potatoes and green beans were great. The chicken was fine. It was, had some flavor. It was whatever. It wasn't dry or anything, but I just didn't love the flavor, and I didn't feel like it actually had a lot of meat on the piece that I got. But Aili just had some mac and cheese, and then we refilled our water cups with the ice and water here also. We did not do the refillable drink mugs. If you want to hear my thoughts on that, go back to Regan and I's early episode on the Disney dining plan. It's just not really something that we are super into because I don't really think it's worth the money for us. Maybe if we were staying for a really long period of time, but since you can't fill them in the park, I just don't personally think it's worth the money. I try not to drink a ton of soda a day, and we have reusable water cups that we were able to fill there. So yeah, I thought that was fine. Then after we ate, we went over to explore the Art of Animation Resort to kind of let our food settle before we went into the pool. And we went and visited just the Nemo and the car sections because, again, I did not have the stroller at this point, so Aili was walking this whole time. And it was super cute. I didn't realize that Art of Animation had interior entrances to their rooms. And so it was neat to get to see kind of the layout of that resort as well. We honestly could have probably just swam in that pool because it was fairly empty and there's no bracelet or room key beeper for let them to know where you're staying. But it was barely over 65 degrees outside. And so Aili wanted to go in the pool near our room so that we could quickly get back upstairs to change before Disney Springs and not be freezing walking back to our room. Art of Animation was definitely cute and the family suites are a big plus, but I am glad that we didn't spend the extra money just to have the standard Ariel room there. I think it would have been a good bit more when I was looking at our original booking estimates. So from what I have from our original estimates, it looks like it would have been for a just standard Little Mermaid room at Art of Animation versus the standard room at Pop. It would have been another $115, which isn't a lot in the grand scheme of things. However, that's our lightning lanes. So it's really more worth it to me to have things like lightning lanes or a cooler souvenir or something than pay the extra money for the room that we were literally spending no time in. Maybe I would have felt differently if we were there a lot of the time, if we had a resort day or something like that. But I was really glad that we didn't pay the difference and just saved the money and used it towards our lightning lanes and, individual lightning lane, or well, whatever it's called, lightning lane multi-pass and lightning lane single passes. That was worth it to me to save that $115. But we headed back over to Pop after we finished walking around and saw all the decor over there. And Aili swam at the pool near our room in that 80s, 90s section, the smaller pool. So the big bonus to me about Disney hotels is that their pool water is truly heated. A lot of the other hotels we've stayed at in the area, even the Hilton Grand Vacations pools that we've been to all 3 different ones right there in Orlando. They say that their pools are heated and they are not. They are cold. Unless it is hot outside, they are not warm. So if it's 70 degrees out and you get in the pool at another resort outside of Disney, from my experience, or in a neighborhood, we've rented, an Airbnb or whatever before too, it is freezing. So these pools are actually warm. I put my feet in and was okay, I would swim in this. However, it was windy and cold and I was just no, I'm not into this. And so I helped Aili get her life jackets. That's the other bonus about Disney resorts is they do have life jackets. They are first come, first serve, but there were plenty because it was a chillier day. There were a lot of kids in the pool. There were not a lot of adults in the pool. Most parents were kind of sitting on the edge watching their kids or whatever. And so she swam for about an hour. So she had a lot of fun with that. Then we went and got changed again and headed to the bus for Disney Springs. We maybe waited 10 minutes for the bus and it was not even full. So when we got to Disney Springs, we went to the Lego store first. So Aili had a gift card from my in-laws to shop on our trip, and she just wanted to get something small from here. But instead of a Lego set or something, she decided to get this cute little ghost spider Lego keychain, which was like $5. It was very reasonable. And we looked around for a bit, and she was amazed, as I always am, about the huge Lego statues that they have in the store and outside of the store. It was really cool. And it is just a cool place to stop. They also have little play areas to mess around with Legos too. Then we headed over to World of Disney next, and it was busy but not crazy. She found a Snow White Barbie doll because she didn't have Snow White in her collection yet, and I'm sure she would have spent her entire gift card there if she wanted to, but I had to constantly remind her this is only our first day. We might want to see what's at the parks. And so next we headed over to the Little Words Project booth. They didn't have the bracelet that I was looking for, so we just kind of quickly moved on to get dinner at Blaze because Aili decided she wanted pizza. Usually we would have gone to Deluxe or something, but she wanted pizza, so we went to Blaze, which was easy. And it was super busy, but they did move pretty quick, honestly. I was impressed with that. Afterwards, we headed over to Everglazed Donuts, which was a first for us. We got the s'mores donut and their signature donut, which is blue frosting with sprinkles, and we set them aside to eat in the morning during the wait for the Skyliner. They did have a lot of options here of different donuts, and it was really pretty when you walked in. There's all these different donuts that look super fancy, but they were expensive. Like $6 a donut expensive, which made me almost gasp. But the donuts were big. They were good. They weren't great. I probably wouldn't make a special trip to go there again. But after we picked out our donuts, we went next door to Salt and Straw to get our ice cream. And I was overwhelmed by all of the choices there as well. Because when we went to Salt and Straw in Portland years ago, Maddie and I went, they only had like 6 flavors or something like that. And a lot of them were unique, like lavender and honey or different stuff, and this had more traditional flavors than what I was expecting. Aili got this Rice Krispie and marshmallow featured flavor, and I got the Snickerdoodle cookie, which is what I got back in Portland years ago. It was delicious. There were lots of flavors that I would have loved to try, so we'll definitely be back there for sure at some point. And then we headed back to the resort to shower and get some sleep because we had a very early first park day. So our first park day did have an early start. We got up at 6 a.m. and got dressed and packed the backpack. Then we went to get the stroller from Kingdom Strollers to meet up at the spot near the main entrance of the hotel, which was super easy. They were right on time. Initially, I was like, okay, it's 6:30. Maybe we'll go back to the room until 7 since the Skyliner didn't open till 7. But we were already dressed, ready to go, put everything we needed to in the stroller. And so I just decided, let's just go ahead and head over to the Skyliner. And I'm really glad that I did. This was our first Skyliner experience specifically for rope drop. And so we pulled up to the Skyliner about 6:40, and the line was already like 20 people deep in each line. So for Pop, there were like 20 people, and then for Art of Animation, there were 20 people. And by the time we actually started boarding, people for Pop were all the way back to the bowling pins, like snaked around back by those resorts. And it just showed me, even though you have the Skyliner, you still have to get there super early. Considering the park didn't actually open until 8:30 for early entry, the line to get over there was wild to me. And the actual, Skyliner didn't start running until just before 7:30. So I was shocked by this. I mean, again, my first time rope dropping with the Skyliner. Maybe this is normal. Maybe this is a busy time. I'm not sure. I did have friends who have stayed here, and they said that the line moves quick when you're farther back too. Like, it doesn't take that long, but it felt like it was going to take a long time, especially because they were loading some people from Pop, then some people from Art of Animation and stuff. But I know some people prefer to sleep a little longer and still get there fairly early, but we wanted to get there as early as we could. Another part about this is that it was a chilly morning. It was about 44 degrees. So we ate our donuts and waited in line, and Aili was definitely cold and tired, but she had the stroller, so she honestly was fine. She had a blanket. She was good. Some families without strollers I felt bad for with the little kids because it is a lot of walking at Disney, and I don't remember what age we stopped using the stroller, but it was probably long after I should have been in a stroller. My guess is around age 9. But we did get crammed into a Skyliner with another family, which is customary unless you're a large group. You probably will be shoved into a Skyliner with another group. And we got to load on a smidge before 7:30. Navigating the stroller onto the Skyliner was a learning curve as well, but we made it. Then we transferred at Caribbean Beach over to Epcot. Once we got over to International Gateway, that entrance in the back, we went through security where we got stopped, and I thought it was because of the battery pack and the iPad, but we'll see if that theory was correct later. I did totally forget to take them out, which is my bad, rookie mistake. Regan would have been like, "What are you doing? Are you new?" I'm not new here, but I sure was acting like it. And then, like everyone else, we headed to Remy at about 8 a.m. They let us in the gate and then actually across the bridge all the way to the entrance of the ride. We didn't have to stop at the front of the bridge like I have in the past with Regan and, during other early entry times that we've been there. And at 8:20, they let us snake through the line and we walked right onto the ride, not really having to wait more than 5 minutes or so. We are off the ride right at like 8:33, and then we headed right over to Frozen. And I made another mistake of going through World Showcase. I don't really actually know if this was a mistake because it was super empty, but I do think Regan and I had proved walking back through towards Canada than Mexico was faster to Norway, but it might have been more crowded that way, so it probably was a wash of like time versus walking through the empty World Showcase. And the wait time was listed at Frozen as 30 minutes, but we probably only waited about 15. We really did not wait long at all. After that, Anna and Elsa weren't quite out yet, so we headed over to Soarin', where the posted wait time was 5 minutes, and that was about right. Aili did want to go again, and so we got back in line because the wait time did say 5 minutes, but then the line was visibly longer, like 3 times longer than it had been when we just were in line, and it was 5 minutes. So we decided to skip that, even though it might have been, a quick like 15-minute wait. She wanted to go ahead and head to Figment. And Aili had been asking to meet Figment, but when we got there, she saw he wasn't signing autographs. He does like a little card and he does do pictures. So she said, never mind, because we are all about getting our frame signed for this trip. We do a matted frame every trip with different color Sharpies. Well, every trip. We started this last year and we really liked it. So our playroom, we're starting to fill up our playroom with them. But we went through the gift store where she bought a Figment stuffy and we got the Figment Golden book. And the stuffy she immediately became obsessed with, and he was like part of our group the rest of the day. He was in all these pictures and everything. But next we headed over to meet Mickey, Minnie, and Goofy. And this wasn't originally on our agenda at Epcot because she really wanted to meet Sorcerer Mickey at Hollywood Studios, even though we've met him before. But then she decided she did want to do that at Epcot instead because you get to meet all 3 at once. And so on our way, we stopped and took pictures with the different character topiaries that were all over the place. They were so beautiful. I love the Flower and Garden Festival. It's my favorite of all the festivals personally. So it was really fun to see all of the different topiaries this year again. And it was about a 20-minute wait and for the Mickey, Minnie, and Goofy. And I hadn't met these characters at Epcot in years, so I hadn't seen the new Communicore like meet and greet area, and it was nice. Afterwards, it was time for us to use our Guardian single pass. So everything we did before this, so Figment, Soarin', Frozen, Remy, was all just with early morning entry. We did not have any reserved multipass for Epcot. Everything was starting at Hollywood Studios, but the wait times were pretty low, so it ended up working out great. I'm glad we did it the way that we did it. We got on Guardians around 10:48, which was great timing, and luckily she loved it. We basically walked right into the waiting room for the pre-show, which was awesome. We got the back row and we had I Ran, the Cursed song. I really wish we would have had something else, but that's okay. Before we got on, the wait time was about 90 minutes for standby, but by the time we got off, it was up to 2 hours. So it has jumped up. I know I was shocked that it had been staying around an hour because Tron was so long when it initially opened, but I don't know that people understood that standby was available and whatnot initially. And of course, Aili wanted to ride it again, but I told her we would have to stand there for 2 hours. So I was like, no, we're not doing that. After that, we stopped to get some lunch and we both got kids' meals and they were fine. They were whatever, a pizza and burger. And then we headed over to Mexico so I could get my margarita, which was delicious as always, and made our way back to Norway for the Elsa and Anna meet and greet. And on the way, we did see Asha out, so we stopped to meet her. Then we met Elsa and Anna, which was likely our longest wait of the day. It took about 30 minutes, and that's what it said on the outside, and that was pretty much accurate. After Anna and Elsa, I asked her if she wanted to go meet anyone else in World Showcase, like Alice or Belle, and she was pretty tired, so she said no, she wanted to head over to Hollywood Studios, and she slept in the stroller while I pushed her over to the Skyliner to get to Hollywood Studios. Since she was sleeping initially, we didn't stop at Riviera to look at the mosaics, but then, of course, she woke up like as soon as we pulled into Caribbean Beach. So when we got out to Hollywood, I took out the iPad and the charging brick, and of course, our bag alarm still went off. So we went over to security, and I still can't figure out what was setting it off that day because our cups were also in the stroller holder. So I don't know what was happening, but we just had bad luck with security and the bags going off. Usually we know what to take out and it's not a problem, but it was for whatever reason this trip. And once we got into the park, we had our first Lightning Lane multipass at Tower of Terror and got there right about 1:30, maybe a little bit before. Then we headed over to meet Donald and Daisy and watch Muppet Vision 3D as a final farewell, which was so good. And I did book another Lightning Lane multipass for Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, which was towards the end of the evening. I think the Lightning Lane multipass for that started at 6:30, 6:45. But when we were at Muppet Vision 3D, the show was just so good, and it just reminded me, I'm so sad that they haven't announced that this will be on Disney Plus or moved to the other theater over by, Rock and Roller Coaster, since they're redoing it to Muppets. They've said nothing officially yet. They just keep saying, it's ending here in May, but I just can't imagine them getting rid of it totally without doing something with it, but time will tell. Afterwards, we got to go over to Indiana Jones for the 3:15 show, and this is always a favorite of mine. We got to sit close to the front, which was really fun for Aili because usually we've been sitting almost in the way back. And when that ended, we made our way back towards Galaxy's Edge to ride Rise of the Resistance, which was our next Lightning Lane single pass. So you can only have 2 Lightning Lane single passes in a day, so you can't, book this ride multiple times. You can't do the same ride twice, but if you're hopping to all 4 parks, like on a challenge day, you can only do 2 single pass in a day. So if you were going to all 4 parks, you couldn't do, Tron and Mine Train and then Flight of Passage and the Guardians of the Galaxy and Rise of the Resistance. You can only pick 2 for that day. So that was something I, kept in mind. For this day, there were only the 2 available, and I did want to get both of them, so we went ahead and had booked both. And I just really love this ride. It is always a favorite of mine, and even though we're not familiar with Star Wars, I mean, we know what it is, we know the characters, but we're not like huge Star Wars fans, but it is just so fun. And I think it's just a ride that everyone can enjoy, even if you don't love Star Wars. And even though Aili had no clue what was going on, she just thought it was so fun and so cool. And it's just one that, as I was riding it, I kept thinking how incredible it really is, just how immersive it is, from the ship to the Stormtrooper room to the actual attraction. It's just such a fun ride. So that was a really good time, and I'm really glad that I took her on that because, again, she wasn't tall enough last year, or she might have just been tall enough, but we didn't really want to pay for it. But I'm glad that we did this time because it was just something, fun to do that she hadn't done. Afterwards, we headed over to the 4:45 show of Beauty and the Beast, and it was so good. Another one of my favorites. Bella's my favorite princess, and so I always try to catch the show when we're at Hollywood Studios. Initially, in our plan, if you listen to our pre-trip episode, we had thought we were only going to be able to pick one or the other, but because we got to Hollywood Studios about 30 minutes earlier than I had anticipated, we really got to do a lot more, and everything was moving very quickly. So we got to do both Indiana Jones and Beauty and the Beast, which is great. After Beauty and the Beast, we headed into Toy Story Land, and we took a couple of pictures. We got on Toy Story Mania with our Lightning Lane multipass for that, and that was about 5:30. I think our pass was 4:45 to 5:45. And Aili loves that one. That's another one of my favorite rides. I think it's just so fun. And we had some time until our Slinky Dog pass at 5:55. So the Swirling Saucers line said that it was about like 25 minutes. And honestly, we were on and off that within, maybe 15 minutes. It was pretty quick. So we rode that, which she really loves. I do not super love that ride, but Aili does love it. So we did ride the Alien Swirling Saucers, and then it was time for our Slinky Pass, which was perfect, and we pretty much walked right on that as well. We maybe waited 5 minutes, and that was one that she got off again and was immediately like, please, can we go again? And I was like, no, girl, the line is 85 minutes long, and it was full, so we did not go on it again. At this time, we had a little bit of a wait until we had any other pass or anything come up. So we went and ate dinner at Backlot Express. It was fine. It's like mediocre chicken strips and some mac and cheese again for Aili. And then we did something new that I have never done before. We went ahead and went to the Mickey and Minnie's Vacation Fun little short thing that used to be in the Sounds Dangerous theater. And then it was like some Star Wars thing after that. And it was really cute. Aili really likes those cartoons that are on Disney Plus. She loves the Halloween one, the Scary Stories episode, and she watches these frequently. So she thought that it was really fun to kind of see it in this big theater. And after we got done with that, we ran over to Mickey and Minnie's because it was just time for our Lightning Lane. And at that time, we walk up to the theater and for Mickey and Minnie's. And it was, okay, so our Lightning Lane, was initially 7:45 to 8:45, which was fine because I had wanted to get over to Fantasmic by 8:30 to kind of wait to get into the theater. And so my notes, we have us walking up to Mickey and Minnie's at 7:51. We get all the way through to wait outside of the pre-show. And they say, unfortunately, this ride is down and we do not anticipate it coming back up anytime in the near future. And we were so bummed. But the funny part is the people behind us in line, I turned around and I'm like, hey, you were behind us in line at our very first ride of the day at Remy's. And they were. So it's funny, a totally different park. First ride, last ride, we kind of were there together. They had a little girl as well. But I felt bad for them because it was the last day of their trip, their last Hollywood Studios day. And they had not ever ridden this ride before. So I felt bad that they didn't get to experience it, but we were granted a golden ticket, Fast Pass, Lightning Lane, Multipass, so that we could use that at Magic Kingdom the next day on anything besides the big ones. Like, I don't think we could use it on Tiana's Mine Train or Peter Pan, but we could use it on Space, and we hadn't gotten a Space Lightning Lane as one of our initial picks, and my mom doesn't care to ride that, so that was a nice little bonus. And we have been on Mickey and Minnie's before. It's at Disneyland, so we're hoping to go on it there, so it ended up being okay. Then we walked over to Fantasmic, and the girl gave me a heart attack because she was like, oh, hey, friends, you just missed the first half of the show, but you can go join in the back. And my heart sunk because I thought we like totally missed the show and that was our only opportunity to see it. But there, I guess, was an 8 o'clock show and a 9:30 show. And I do think I knew that. If I would have known Mickey and Minnie's was going to be down, I would have just headed over there and we could have watched Fantasmic and had an earlier night. But I was like, no, we want to see the whole thing. So she said, come back closer to 9. And so we went and watched the projection show on the Chinese theater, and that's always a really cool thing. And we were going to go on Star Tours, but I said, no, let's head back over to Fantasmic. She was getting tired. We stopped and got cotton candy at a booth right on Sunset Boulevard, so we didn't have to wait in a long line at Fantasmic. And I'm glad we walked over there because we ended up getting really good Fantasmic seats and it was not as full as the first show. So it ended up working out fine. I think it still would have been better to do the 8 o'clock show because she was really tired and we had already done everything we wanted to do. I mean, if we got to ride Mickey and Minnie's again, like, that would have been fine. But anyway, yeah, it was still great. And Fantasmic was incredible as usual. That is just my favorite show. I mean, I'll talk about it in a little bit when we talk about Happily Ever After, but watching that and the next night watching Happily Ever After, Fantasmic is it for me. I really love it. And then we headed back to the Skyliner where we actually walked right on. We had no wait. And I think this is, again, because we did the later Fantasmic. So I do feel like that was a benefit to wait a little longer so we didn't have to stand in a long Skyliner line. We literally walked to the Skyliner and walked right on. I was cruising. I was walking very fast with that stroller. I'm a fast walker. I am a challenge runner. But I really, was impressed with how smoothly everything went. We got back to the hotel and got to bed, and my mom had gotten there and got into the room and everything fine. So that was great. We actually got back to our room right about 10:30. So Fantasmic ends at 10, and we made it back to our room by 10:30. So that includes Skyliner, transferring over at Caribbean Beach, the whole 9 yards. And of course, Aili was wide awake then, but she had fallen asleep like in the line before Fantasmic, woke up for the show, and then didn't go back to bed until we got into our beds that night. So she probably fell asleep about 11 o'clock. We were up again bright and early the next morning around 6 a.m. to get to the bus stop. And we left the room about, I don't know, like 6:30, 6:40, and got over to the bus stop just because we were ready and there was nothing else to do but sit in the room. We didn't want to do that. It was a little warmer this day. I think it was like 50 degrees instead of 45, and that did make a difference. We were fine. I wasn't freezing because I was in shorts this day. And this was my Tiana Bound, I was told. If you listen to the last episode, I was like, I don't know what that's called. The influencers call it, but Tiana Bound outfit is what the fancy people call it. And Aili was in her cute little Shop the Magic Box Tiana outfit as well. And we went to rope drop, and the bus line was actually like a few people deep already, but it was nice because they actually had two buses back to back. So we had folded up the stroller, which that is my only complaint about the Bob, is it's just so dang heavy and really hard to hold once you fold it up. I really don't like it, but it otherwise is a great stroller, especially for older, bigger kids. But anyway, so we got onto the bus, got to the actual gates of Magic Kingdom, and that's the pro of staying, on the property that brings a bus right there, is that you're right at the gates. And so we walked up, we got there about, I'm trying to think, like 7 o'clock, and we had to wait there until about 8 o'clock. We got into the park right a smidge before 8 and got to the rope drop area outside of Fantasyland to try to head to Peter Pan. At 8:23, they told us, it's time, we're getting ready, we're going to let you in. And by 8:30, we were out over to Peter Pan. We were on the ride. We were off the ride, according to my pictures, by like 8:44. So we got in and out pretty quick, which was great. And then we headed over to Pooh immediately, which said it had a 15-minute wait, but it was honestly like a 5-minute wait. We barely waited at all. We got over to Ariel by 9 o'clock and got right on that. We walked right on. We had no wait at all there. And then we headed over to start our little treat run. So our Magic Kingdom day, I really wanted to focus on trying all these different desserts or treats, like snack type things. And I had a list of what I wanted to eat. And we started off at Gaston's Tavern with the cinnamon roll and LeFou's brew. These are all things we have not tried before. So the cinnamon roll I thought was good. I wouldn't say amazing. I would say like 4 out of 5. But Aili and my mom were like, oh my gosh, 5 out of 5. It was so good. I wish it had a little more frosting. It was more just like a glaze sprinkled on there. The LeFou's brew I actually really liked. I also said like 4 out of 5, I believe. And my mom and Aili did not like it at all. They thought it was gross. So I ended up drinking that whole thing by myself. But we all just split like the one cinnamon roll. Then we had our Buzz Lightyear Fast Pass. So we walked over and did Buzz, and that went super smooth as well. We did then use our lightning lane, the golden ticket lightning lane, for Space Mountain. So Aili and I went on that. It was her first time on, and it definitely freaked her out, which is funny. She went on Guardians and Tower of Terror and all these things the day before, but like for whatever reason, Space Mountain, you're sitting individually. I did hold on to her shoulders the whole time, but it's dark. It is a little fast. It whips you around. So the whole time she's like, get me off, get me off. And then at the end, she was like, okay, I would do it again. But she was a little bit freaked out by that. It was, a fun first time experience. And then we went to the People Mover. That was by 10:16. So we really were cranking things out. Space, we didn't wait like at all with our lightning lane. And the People Mover is always such a vibe. I love that ride. I could just sit on that thing for like half an hour. It's just so relaxing and peaceful. The music going past the castle and Tron now, it's just one of my favorite things. And then we did go to the castle just to take a couple of quick pictures. Honestly, it was so bright that none of them turned out that great, but I did get some cute ones of Aili. After we headed to the magic carpets of Aladdin, because Aili really wanted to do that, and Aladdin and Jasmine had been out, but they had closed the line to meet them. So we went ahead and did carpets, and then we went over to Pirates of the Caribbean to use our lightning lane, and then we headed back over to meet Aladdin and Jasmine. And let me tell you, we have done a ton of character experiences in my lifetime, in my 30 plus years of life. This was the most, I don't want to say ridiculous, but they were very friendly. They're very friendly. We kept calling her Chatty Cathy, Jasmine, because Jasmine and Aladdin talked so long to each group of people. Like, there were two adults in front of us that waited, and they had their fancy cameras and they were trying to get pictures of them. And I'm not even being dramatic. They were up there for like 7 to 10 minutes talking to Aladdin and Jasmine, taking pictures on their own cameras, having Aladdin and Jasmine pose by themselves to take pictures. It was the most insane thing. Not that they wanted to take pictures of them, but that the cast members doing the meet and greet allowed Aladdin and Jasmine to continue to take this much time with each group. So there had been another like party with a kid before that was just like really into Jasmine, and she was up there again for like 7 minutes. So we ended up waiting almost 40 minutes to meet Aladdin and Jasmine, which was crazy. I'm trying to look at what time we got off Pirates. Yeah, 11:04. And we met Aladdin and Jasmine at 11:50. So yeah, 40 minutes, which is crazy. It was really nice because they took a lot of time with Aili and they asked her a lot of questions and they were stunning. But I also was like, all right, now smile and say cheese and let's go, because there's all these tiny little kids waiting to meet them. And it was so interesting. It was just a very unique experience, because the day prior when we were meeting Mickey and Minnie, there was someone from Asia who was like dressed to the nines in this beautiful dress, came specifically to take pictures with Mickey and Minnie, and they rushed her right along. They did not let her stop and take a bunch with her. She wanted to take some with like her big camera and then her phone camera, and they were like, no, pick one camera and go. And I was so surprised that Aladdin and Jasmine took this much time, and you could tell the poor photo pass person was like visibly annoyed that they were taking so long with everyone. I felt so bad because it was also getting hot at this point. So anyways, interesting meet and greet experience, but they were awesome. They looked great as Aladdin and Jasmine. I just was like, wow, they're talking a lot. Then we went over, and another new experience, we did the new Country Bears Jamboree show, which was really cute. It was still very empty in there though. I'm like, they spent all this money redoing this and time and effort, and it was still, there were like 10 people in that theater. And granted, it was parade time. I don't know. It's very cute. I know it's like a special Walt thing, but it was kind of sad how empty it was still, even though it was new. But I did enjoy it much more with the new renditions of the show, with the different songs and everything. I won't spoil too much for those who haven't seen it, but it was cute. I liked it. Aili was like, what are we doing here? And why are these bears singing? And she didn't really understand it because she never saw the original. But as someone who saw the original often, because my grandpa on my mom's side loves it, it was cool to go back and see it, how they've redone it. And I do think he would enjoy the version today too. So we did do that. And then we went back over, we got kind of caught behind the parade, and Aili didn't really care to see the parade, which was interesting to me, but she really was like, no, don't really want to stand in the sun and watch all these floats go by. So we tried to kind of follow the parade as it was finishing back into Fantasyland so that she could meet Ariel, because that was high on her list that she wanted to do. And so that was a super fun meet and greet. Then we walked over. We had gotten a Lightning Lane multipass for Dumbo after one of ours was used. So we did Dumbo, got some cute pictures and everything there, and decided to take the train back over to Tiana's for our Tiana's Lightning Lane, which was a great idea. It was fun to get to ride the train. And so I hadn't been on that half of the train from Fantasyland to Frontierland in a long time. With Regan, we rode it from Frontierland to Tomorrowland. Frontierland to Fantasyland, and then ran over to Tron or whatever during our challenge. So it was nice to get to kind of see the full loop now with the Tron change and everything. And then we rode Tiana's, which was another Lightning Lane multipass that I had booked. And at this point, it was about almost 2 o'clock. So it was warm enough out that we were like, okay, we're not going to freeze our butts off if we get wet. Of course, this was Eili's first time. She never rode Splash Mountain. And she was like, let's sit in the front. We're going to sit in the front. I want to sit in the front. And I was like, girl, this is steep. Do you see how steep this is? Like, you're not going to freak out. And she's like, no. I was like, we're also going to get wet. And she was like, that's okay. And I was like, okay. So we rode in the front and oh my God, this kid was freaking out. We got soaked. I mean, y'all, TMI, but my underwear was wet. My shorts were dripping water. And she cried. She cried. She was like, this is horrible. Who wants to ride this? And I was like, girl, I told you. But I think part of it was that the water was so cold. It was freezing. And so she did not like being cold. We dried off very quickly because it was warm. But as you're at the end and all the logs get bogged up because people are getting on and off, we had the freezing cold air conditioning blowing on us. And that like did it for her. She was like, no. So after the post-trauma from Tiana's, we went over and got some beignets and tried that. And I thought they were, again, good, not great. They were like a 4 to me. Aili pretty much gave everything a 5. She was like, it was amazing, 5. So she had those. And then I went and got in line for an I Lava You float for all of us to share. And she went and did the tree house with my mom's, was Family Robinson tree house. So she had never been in that before. That was fun for her. And the I Lava You float was like a nice surprise. I think at first I was like, ooh, this is really orange. And I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, but it was so good. That was actually my favorite treat of the day and one that I will go back and for sure get again. I gave it a 5. I'd give it a 10. We all really loved it. I loved the Pop Rocks on the outside. It was delicious. I do think it's a lot. Like if I would have just eaten it by myself, it might be too much. We all shared it, but it was really good. So I enjoyed that a lot. Then we walked back over towards Fantasyland to do our Mad Tea Party Lightning Lane multipass. And we saw that Mirabelle was out. And so we're like, ooh, okay, let's go do Mirabelle. So we went and got in line for her. We met Mirabelle. We went and did the Mad Tea Party. And then Aili and I went ahead and did our Mine Train pass. And my mom waited in line for Pooh because he was out as well. So Mine Train actually ended up being a very quick lightning lane. However, then we did get stuck. And something that I forgot to say in the beginning of the day was that the ride was actually down the entire early entry. So when we got there for early entry that morning, people went and split off either to Tomorrowland or towards Fantasyland. And the Fantasyland usually splits between two things, Mine Train and Peter Pan for the most part. We went to Peter Pan, but Mine Train was actually down. So by the time we got off Peter Pan and went to Pooh, it was down. It hadn't moved at all. And then when we got off Pooh and went to Ariel, it was down and hadn't moved at all. So it did not come up for a very long time, which I felt so bad. Basically, people wasted their entire early entry standing in line, and the line was snaked all the way back towards Ariel. Not quite all the way to Ariel, but all the way around the side of the ride. So it ended up being a very long line by the time that they restarted it there, which ended up working out for us because we had the single pass and initially our time was 9:15 to 10:15, but because it wasn't running when we first went to go ride it because it was down after Ariel, we just went ahead and waited and rode it later in the day, which worked out well. So yeah, that was a good move, but we did get stuck on it right after the mining part on the up ramp, which was a little scary, and then stuck a little bit later right before you get off. But it did seem like it was back up and running by the time we were done meeting Pooh. It was up again. So after we got off Mine Train, we went and met Pooh and Tigger, and this was again a pretty long wait. I felt bad. There were a lot of people with little tiny babies in the cutest Pooh Bear outfits waiting to take their picture, and they probably waited a good 30 to 40 minutes, but luckily we didn't have to wait quite as long because my mom was waiting in the Fast Pass line while we went on Mine Train because she just doesn't care for roller coasters like that. After that, we went to the Fairy Tale Princess Hall and we met Cinderella. We got in line for Cinderella, and I did think that they always had a second princess, but the app only showed Cinderella. It said the wait was 35 minutes. We waited 15 maybe, and it ended up being Cinderella and Belle. So that was a really nice surprise for Aili. Both of them got to sign her frame matting. And then after that, she didn't want to wait right away again for Tiana, but we hadn't realized something. The sign outside of the Fairy Tale Princess Hall didn't say Tiana, but the app did. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. But we went, after meeting Cinderella and Belle, over to the Mickey's PhilharMagic, and that was super cute. I haven't seen it since it was updated. I don't want to give away too much, but I really, really loved it. I just think that's such a neat ride, or attraction, I should say. It's not a ride, the show, but it was really cute, and Aili enjoyed it. She'd never seen it before. It was a pretty full theater. We got in right away. Luckily, they opened the doors right as we had walked through the queue, and we did get in, so we didn't have to wait, which was really great, but it was pretty full. So if there were too many more people, we probably would have had to wait to the next theater. And afterwards, we decided to go back over and try to meet Tiana. And this is when we realized the sign outside of the Princess Fairy Tale Hall didn't say Tiana. It didn't have her picture. So we said to the cast member, hey, wait a minute, there's no Tiana picture. And they were like, oh, so sorry, friends. Unfortunately, we can't confirm or deny if Tiana's inside. And I was like, well, the app specifically says meet Princess Tiana and a special guest. So what do you mean? Then it shouldn't say that. So I was very frustrated. Obviously, poor Aili was upset and cried because she was dressed, in her Tiana dress, and was all excited to meet Tiana, has never met her before. And they were like, oh, well, there's 2 mystery princesses, and go inside and maybe she'll be back, but she hasn't been back for quite a while. And we were like, okay, great. So we got in line. It said 30 minutes for this mystery princesses, basically 2 mystery princesses. And when we got in, it was about 20 minutes or so. And it was Aurora and Rapunzel, which Aili was excited to meet them, but it wasn't Tiana. And I think something that I am going to put in my survey, Disney always sends you a survey after you visit. And I just am going to say, basically the app should not say Tiana if she's not guaranteed, because it's incredibly disappointing to little kids. If it's always 2 mystery princesses, then it's always 2 mystery princesses and you don't know who you're going to get. And I get that they do that because they might have to swap people out. It kind of depends who's there that day. But the app specifically said Cinderella on one side and Tiana on the other. And things happen, obviously, maybe there was an emergency or she was sick and there wasn't someone to cover or something like that. But it just shouldn't say that then. It should just say meet the princesses in the Fairy Tale Hall. So that's my opinion on that. I think they need to change that. It was pretty frustrating. Then we went over to It's a Small World, where we did have a Lightning Lane multipass and rode that. Afterward, we went and Aili and I did our Lightning Lane multipass for Tomorrowland Speedway while my mom got dinner at Cosmic Rays. For whatever reason, at that restaurant, it wasn't taking my mobile order. We had to do a actual order in the restaurant, and we had done mobile order earlier, so I don't know what the deal was with the app, but it wasn't working. So she went and got in line and got our food while we rode the Tomorrowland Speedway. And after that, my mom and Aili went to go get in line at the Cinderella's Royal Carousel, which is now called Prince Charming Royal Carousel, whatever it's called, the carousel. And it was an extremely long line, but I had gotten in line to get a cattail at the a Cheshire cattail, and then an Aurora cone, because those were the 2 treats that I really wanted to try before we left. So the cattail I just went ahead and put into our bag because I knew I wasn't going to eat it right then. And the Aurora cone I started eating, and my mom called me and said, yeah, we are not down for this line. We haven't moved, and it's been about 10 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and just get out of line and come meet you. So they helped me finish the Aurora cone. And then while we were eating we ate our cattail while we were watching the fireworks. So after the Aurora cone, we did our very last attraction, which was a Lightning Lane multipass for Haunted Mansion that I had gotten earlier in the day when one of our earlier passes expired. And we did this right about 7 o'clock. And we knew that we wanted to go immediately from this to get a good spot in the fireworks. And at first, we stood there for a little bit and we didn't move. And I kind of set a timer on my Fitbit for 10 minutes and was like, okay, if we don't get into the stretching room in 10 minutes, we're going to have to get out of line and come back later. But we ended up moving, and so we didn't have to get out of line, which was great. And then we went to try to get a spot, not at the train station at Main Street, because I wanted to be able to see the projections and let Aili see the projections, but we wanted to be more like towards the Casey's Corner area of Main Street for the fireworks, but it was already packed. It was so packed. So we just kind of squeezed in where we found room, and Aili had fallen asleep in the stroller at this point, and we had about a 40-minute wait until the fireworks started. So I sat on the ground, was kind of going through pictures and stuff from the day, and we almost witnessed a huge fight between this guy and another lady. We were standing next to this stroller that had a balloon tied to the stroller handle, and it was pretty high up in the air. And this lady came by and said, "Oh, is that your balloon?" to us. And we said, "Oh, no, that's not our stroller." And she said, "Well, it's in everybody's pictures that's standing behind it, like of the castle. It's in the way. So whose is it so that we can ask them to move it down?" And I said, "Oh, I don't know. I don't know if it's that person over there." There were like kind of two strollers next to each other. And she went and was going to just move the balloon down, which I don't know that I would have touched somebody else's stuff. But this guy turned around and snapped on her and was like, "Hey, get your hands off my stroller, get your hands off my balloon." And the lady was like, "Well, we can't see because it's in the way of all of our pictures." And they were like arguing, yelling back and forth. And so then we decided to just kind of step over a little bit and give them some space because they were getting very heated and aggressive, and it was not very magical. So then he was like, "We're not moving the balloon. You're lucky my wife's not here, or a real fight would have started." And the lady was like, "Geez, I just can't see, blah, blah, blah." So in the end, the wife came back, and after all that, the guy kept talking to the kid about it and how so ridiculous, and people are so ridiculous. And I was like, actually, like, you are being a little ridiculous. Just move the balloon down. Like, who freaking cares? But he didn't. And then the mom ended up coming back, and she was like, he tells her the whole story of what happened, and she's like, "Oh, let's just move the balloon down." And she like moved the balloon down, and it was so funny because the whole time the guy was like, "My wife's gonna come back, and if she were here, there'd be a real brawl and there'd be punches thrown." And the wife is just like, "Whatever, move the balloon." So I was like, "Yeah, sir, chill your ego down." Anyway, so we watched Happily Ever After, which was very cute. I've only seen it one other time, and it was 2021, like the end of 2021. So I haven't seen it. That was the only other time. Everything else that I've seen at Magic Kingdom was like the holiday fireworks, either Christmas or the Halloween party. So it was nice to see the regular Happily Ever After again. I do have to say, as much as I love it, I love the music and the animation on the castle, and the fireworks at the castle is very magical. However, I still love Fantasmic more, and here's why. Fantasmic, you at least have a seat. You have a designated spot. There aren't people cramming in, hitting you with their strollers. Getting out is an absolute nightmare at Magic Kingdom afterward, and so is after Fantasmic. Like, when you leave Fantasmic, you better hold on to your kids tight because there's so many people. But I just feel like you at least have your own space, and you can pretty much see there's a good spot everywhere in that theater versus in front of the castle. Sometimes there's a tree or a lamppost or the Walt statue, and people are holding their phones up and recording the entire thing, which annoys me so bad. And people's kids are on their shoulders, which I understand because the kids really are the ones that need to see. But it just, yeah, as cute as it was, and I really love the music, I love Jordan Fisher, I just think that Fantasmic is so much better. So sorry, I know Regan is a Happily Ever After stan, and so is Steph, but I just really love Fantasmic more, and that's a huge part of it. It's definitely nostalgia from childhood because that's a childhood show, even though they've updated it. But Happily Ever After, just the crowds and the space of it all, it's just a lot. But the castle, definitely, it's magical. It's something that if you haven't been before, you should see. But I'm not going to say that I would absolutely 100% every single time stay just for that. I'd almost rather go ride other stuff or watch it from the back or in less crowded area than be right in the hub, which is what stinks about the projections being such a big part of it, is like you really have to be in the hub or on Main Street to be able to see everything. So that is pretty much everything. We went back to our bus stop, And we got very lucky that 2 pop buses pulled up back to back, actually 3. So like the first one had already pulled up by the time we got there and was full and left. The second one was filling and we got on the third. And so it was really awesome that they had them ready to go because the park was still open till 11 p.m. But we knew we had that early flight the next day. So we wanted to get back. Aili was asleep. She literally slept through the entire fireworks, which was such a bummer. I tried to wake her up and she was just like, no, which, you know, it was okay because she'd had a long day and she got to do a lot of stuff. We went back to the hotel and then we had a really funny bus driver also, by the way. I cannot remember his name and I wish I could because he was hilarious and he made the bus ride so much more enjoyable than just like driving back in the silence. So that was good. But we got back to the hotel, packed our bags, went to sleep, and then got up the next morning. And I had a huge regret after I booked this trip. But it's just, I mean, it was what it was because it worked out with Ailey's school time off. But it was the time change, obviously, and I did not realize that. So we got back to the hotel and went to bed by 10:30. We left at 8, probably got to our hotel room we had left at 8:30, got to our hotel room probably by 9:30. And then went to bed by 10:30 and I had my alarm set for 3:30. I'm like, okay, you know, 5 hours of sleep. It's not great, but it'll do. And really it was like less than 4 hours of sleep because of the time change. So by the time I fell asleep and got up, it was only 4 hours and I really felt it that next morning. I mean, doing an early flight like this would not be an option with our younger, but with Aili, we just made it work. So got up, we ended up dropping our stroller off at Terminal A. And it's on the very bottom floor, so you can't really pull up there as a regular car. You have to go into the arrivals or departures area and take the elevator down to level 1, drop it off. There's just like a little roped off area for Kingdom strollers. Make sure it's folded up, make sure all your belongings are out of it. And then I got back in the car and went to Terminal C. So it is kind of a pain in the butt if you're not in Terminal A for your flight, which most flights I've flown out of are Delta and it's Terminal B. A, I believe, is Southwest and a few other airlines, but that was the thing about, I wish that they had a drop off at all the terminals, but I guess that would be a little more difficult for them. And most people probably do a pickup or drop off at the resort, you know, either the day they fly out or the evening before they leave or whatever. But it just didn't work out like us for that trip, but it was convenient to be able to just drop it and go and not have to worry about coordinating something else to get it back to them. And the stroller, you know, process was all very easy. So we got on our flight. It left at 6 a.m. So we got to the airport about 4:30 and got over to our gate by 5. We boarded at 5:15 and the doors closed to the plane 5:45. We took off by 6, landed in Boston, had a quick layover, and got home around 12:30 or 1 o'clock on Sunday. So yeah, very quick trip. It was awesome. We got very lucky with the weather. It was beautiful. The first morning in that Skyliner line was very cold, but everything else was great. So we really had an awesome time and there was nothing that I would have really done differently. I think the stroller being left at home ended up being a blessing in disguise because I didn't have to break it down and drag it myself. So yeah, I think that ended up working out. The headphones that I paid for, that was a pain. That was like one of the things. But at the actual parks, really the only thing I could see different was at Hollywood Studios. If I would have known Mickey and Minnie's was going to be down, I would have tried to get to the earlier Fantasmic show just so that we could have gotten back earlier and slept a little more. But otherwise, it still was like an amazing day. Magic Kingdom was such a magical day. We had a lot of fun trying all the different treats. Oh yeah, and the cattail, when we did try it during the fireworks, I thought it was fine. And people were like, no, you have to have it in the morning with coffee when it's warm. I'm not a coffee drinker, but I could see if it was maybe a little more fresh than we would have, you know, if we got it at nighttime. So I don't know how fresh it was. It was kind of just sitting there in a box and they handed it to me. It was okay, but I definitely think my favorite treat of the entire day was the I Lava You float, and I would get that again in a heartbeat. Everything else was good and I wouldn't mind getting it again, but the I Lava You float was my favorite. And the Aurora cone we liked but didn't love. My mom liked it the best out of all three of us. So yeah, that is everything. So that was our trip. It was an awesome time. And we are very excited to now start planning for our Disneyland trip. We've got a lot of other stuff going on for that actual vacation, Disneyland is just a portion of it. So I'll talk more about that as we get closer in June. But any of you Disneyland people who Disneyland is your home park or you've traveled there frequently, if you have any tips, tricks, anything that you really think we should not miss, we have been, Maddie and I, one time in 2018, but we haven't been back since, and a lot has changed, and it's just not something that we get to do very often. So we do have one day in each park. We're not hopping between parks, and I wish we had a little more time, like another 2 days, like being able to do 2 days at each park, but we just don't have the time because we're trying to do a lot of stuff while we're out in California, because again, we just live so far away on the East Coast. We don't get out there very often, and it will be the kids' first time out to Disneyland. So yeah, any tips, tricks, or advice, please let me know, and I'm excited to do it. So real quick, just wanted to hop over into our March Madness excitement. We are going to have an attraction showdown bracket, and this was just something I thought was fun. We are big March Madness people in our house. We are Duke fans. We live in Chapel Hill. Maddie works for UNC, but I work for Duke, and I love Duke, and so and Maddie loves Duke. That's why I'm a big Duke fan. He grew up as a Duke fan, and even though we lived in Florida. And so we are excited because this year they're doing really, really well. So anyway, back to Disney, not sports, but we decided to go ahead and make a Disney attraction showdown bracket. And we came up with a list of 68 attractions. So not just rides, but attractions. And I asked Dad to get rid of 2. And I also am going to get rid of 2 to make it 64. So Dad's first 2 out were the Barnstormer and also the Tomorrowland Speedway. So those are the 2 that he picked to go out. And for me, the 2 that I'm going to pick to go out are Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor. That's going to be 1. And then my second one that is going to go out is Canada Far and Wide. So those are the 4 that we are kicking out of the attraction list. And I am going to randomize the bracket. So using, a randomizer, I will pair up the attraction so that it's not just, obvious things like the best and the worst and whatever. But I am curious what y'all are going to pick. So be on a lookout on Instagram. Give us a follow at Soarin Around WDW pod. I will post the bracket there. DM me if you can't find it and I will send it to you. And then in our stories each week, I will have y'all vote. So we're going to kind of go through and do a little bit of a different voting system each week and then get down to the end. This week will give you some time to fill out your bracket if you want to, or you can just look on the stories. You don't have to fill it out. This is our quote unquote Winner Wednesday or Selection Sunday, as people in the other world like to call it, but we're calling this Winter Wednesday because our podcast comes out on Wednesdays. And then next week, so March 18th, we are going to go ahead and post the game polls. So we'll do 8 different polls for the North End. Then the next day we'll do the West End, the following day the East End, and then the South game polls. And that will give us the total of 64, kind of breaking it down in half, and so on and so forth. So every couple days we'll have some polls for y'all to vote on, and then we will do a little update on the podcast kind of throughout the time of what's winning, where we're at. And then on April 7th, we will announce the championship and who won the entire bracket on our April 9th episode. So yeah, I'm excited about this. I think it will be super fun. It's just something that's a little different. I don't know if people will be into it. So if not, that's okay. I know similar things have been done in the past, but I didn't see one out this year specifically for attractions. I know people have done characters or movies or whatnot, but I thought attractions would be fun since we are a Disney Parks inspired podcast. But that is it. I know I'm a little over on my time. Thank you so much to everyone for listening. Looking forward to y'all's feedback on what you thought about our trip. If you have any questions, definitely let me know. I'd be happy to share. It was so fun getting to do this solo trip. We had a great time and I would do it again in a heartbeat, but I'm looking forward to the 4 of us getting to experience Disneyland together. So I hope that y'all have a great week and I will talk to you next week. Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to give us a follow on Instagram at Soarin Around WDW pod, where we share fun reels, throwback photos, and dive into our old versus new debates. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. And for our Spotify listeners, a follow and a 5-star review would mean the world. If you're listening on Apple, hit that 5-star button and leave us a written review as well. Thanks again for joining us. See you next time.